It happened over a Thursday night dinner. When I asked Anna about the car payment, she threw down her napkin and said, "I'm not your property." The words hung in the candlelit kitchen like smoke from a blown-out match. We'd been sitting at our usual spots, the same wooden table where we'd shared thousands of meals, discussing the mundane details that keep a household running. The car payment was overdue, a simple fact that needed addressing. But Anna's response cut through the domestic calm like a blade. I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, watching her face in the flickering light. Her jaw was set, her eyes defiant, as if she'd been waiting for this moment to make some grand declaration of independence. The silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken resentment. "Okay," I said finally, setting down my fork. But inside, something had shifted. If Anna wanted to be free from obligation, I was about to show her what that really looked like. That night, I lay awake replaying her words while she slept peacefully beside me. "I'm not your property." The phrase echoed in my mind as I stared at the ceiling, processing years of invisible labor. The midnight oil changes when her car made strange noises, the tax calls that ate up my lunch breaks, the leaky faucets fixed without fanfare, the bills paid without discussion, the thousand small emergencies handled so smoothly she never knew they existed. But as I lay there in the darkness, other memories surfaced, ones I'd been trying to ignore. Anna's phone had become increasingly off-limits over the past few months. She'd started working late more often, coming home with stories about demanding clients and urgent projects that couldn't wait. Her friend Jessica had been calling more frequently, conversations that ended abruptly when I entered the room. Had I been a doting husband or an unpaid servant? And more troubling, had I been a faithful partner to someone who wasn't returning that fidelity? The question gnawed at me as dawn approached. By morning, I'd made my decision. If Anna wanted freedom from obligation, I'd grant it completely, every last bit. When her alarm buzzed at 7, I didn't move. Usually, I'd already be downstairs making coffee, checking her schedule, ensuring her day started smoothly. Instead, I pulled the covers higher and listened to her footsteps in the hallway. The coffee maker gurgled to life, followed by an unusual silence. "Coffee's ready," she called out, her voice carrying a note of confusion. I scrolled through my phone, cafe calm, as her heels clicked impatiently on the kitchen tiles. 20 minutes later, she appeared in the doorway. "Don't forget the oil change appointment at 10. I looked up from my screen. "You've got this." Her eyebrows furrowed. "What?" "It's your car," I said simply, returning to my phone. "You can handle it." The confusion in her eyes was immediate, but I didn't explain. If she wanted independence, explanations would only interfere with the lesson. By noon, the first cracks appeared. The kitchen sink had been dripping for weeks, a repair I'd been meaning to tackle. Instead of grabbing my toolbox, I let it drip. Anna stood at the counter during lunch, the persistent plink, 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 clearly grating on her nerves. "Are you going to fix that?" she asked. "You could call a plumber," I suggested, not looking up from my sandwich. Her car sat in the driveway, fuel gauge hovering near empty. Normally, I'd fill it during my lunch break, but today, I watched through the window as she grabbed her keys and walked to the gas station 6 blocks away. When she returned, her heels were scuffed and her expression stormy. The laundry baskets in the hallway overflowed with clothes, hers mixed with mine in the democratic chaos of shared living. I separated out my items and left the rest. By evening, she was stepping over piles of fabric just to navigate the house. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, but she didn't ask me to help. Pride, I realized, was going to be her downfall. As I watched her struggle with these simple tasks, I noticed something else. Her phone buzzed constantly with notifications she quickly silenced. She'd taken 3 work calls that evening, each one requiring her to step out onto the patio for privacy. When I casually asked about her day, her responses were vague, filled with generic details about meetings and deadlines that didn't quite add up. By Wednesday, the experiments had escalated into full-scale withdrawal. The utility bill sat unopened on the counter, its red final notice stamp glaring accusingly. I'd always handled the utilities. It was part of my invisible choreography of household management. But not anymore. When Anna came home that evening, the house was dark. She flicked the light switch repeatedly, confusion giving way to anger as nothing happened. "The power's out," she announced, storming into the living room where I sat reading by lamplight. "Looks like it," I agreed. "Why didn't you pay the bill?" I closed my book and looked at her calmly. "You wanted independence. This is what it looks like." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "This isn't independence. This is sabotage." "No," I said, standing up slowly. "This is life without someone else managing it for you. You said you weren't my property. Well, property gets maintained. Partners handle their own responsibilities." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. This wasn't the husband she'd grown accustomed to, the one who absorbed problems before they became her concern. This was someone new, someone who'd decided to stop playing the role of invisible caretaker. "I need to make some calls," she said finally, pulling out her phone, "to get this sorted out." As she dialed customer service, I noticed her checking her other messages, her face lighting up briefly at something on her screen before she remembered where she was and schooled her expression back to frustration. The refrigerator stood nearly empty because I hadn't done the weekly grocery run. The trash overflowed because I'd stopped taking it to the curb. Small inconveniences accumulated like interest on a debt, and Anna's frustration grew with each passing day. By Friday, external voices began intruding on our Cold War. Emily, Anna's best friend and chronic worrier, sent increasingly frantic texts. "Haven't heard from you. It's not like you to go radio silent. Are you okay? Your phone keeps going to voicemail. I'm coming over if you don't respond." But it wasn't just Emily texting. I noticed Anna receiving messages from someone named Jay with increasing frequency. The preview notifications showed fragments like "Miss you too" and "When can we?" before she quickly dismissed them. When I asked who Jay was, she claimed it was Jessica from work, but her eyes didn't meet mine. Anna's professional life began to crack under the pressure. I overheard her on a conference call, apologizing to her boss for missed deadlines. The woman who'd built her career on precision and reliability was suddenly struggling to keep plates spinning without her safety net. But I also heard her making other calls, hushed conversations that ended abruptly when I entered the room, followed by quick explanations about client issues that required sensitive handling. The breaking point came on Friday night. Anna's phone rang during dinner, and she glanced at it before letting it go to voicemail. When it rang again immediately, she apologized and stepped outside to take it. Through the kitchen window, I watched her pace the back patio, her free hand gesturing animatedly as she spoke. Her face was animated in a way I hadn't seen in months when she talked to me. She was smiling, laughing, completely absorbed in the conversation. When she finally came back inside, she claimed it had been her sister, but I'd heard her sister's voice enough times to know the difference. Saturday morning arrived with the weight of a reckoning. Anna sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills, bank statements, and account notices. Her hair was unwashed, her face drawn with exhaustion. When I entered the room, she looked up with eyes that held something I hadn't seen in years, vulnerability mixed with something else, guilt. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I sat across from her, the same table that had witnessed Thursday's declaration now serving as neutral ground for our détente. "I never asked for this," she began, her voice trembling with controlled emotion. "Didn't you?" I replied. "Because when you said you weren't my property, I heard loud and clear that you didn't want to owe me anything. Teams have responsibilities, Anna, but yours apparently just ended. Words have weight once they're spoken," I continued. "You made it clear you resented feeling obligated to me. Fine, but that coin has two sides." Her composure cracked. "I just wanted to feel like an equal partner, not like someone you managed." "And I wanted to feel appreciated, not taken for granted," I shot back. Every invisible thing I did to make your life easier, you saw as control. Every problem I solved before it became your burden, you dismissed as ownership. We sat in silence, two people who'd shared a life for 8 years suddenly feeling like strangers. The bills spread between us told the story of our interdependence, utility accounts in my name, car insurance she'd never had to think about, a mortgage we'd somehow managed to juggle for years through unspoken division of labor. "There's something else," Anna said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something I need to tell you." The words hung between us like a confession waiting to be born. I could see her internal struggle, the way she twisted her wedding ring around her finger, a nervous habit she'd developed recently. "Tell me," I said, though part of me already knew. She took a shaky breath. There's someone at work. James. We've been talking, and it became more than just talking. Nothing physical," she added quickly, "but emotionally." The admission hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd suspected it for weeks. All those late nights, the secretive phone calls, the way she'd withdrawn from our relationship while simultaneously resenting my efforts to maintain it. "How long?" I asked. 3 months, maybe 4. She couldn't look at me. "It started as just friendship, someone to talk to about work stress, but then it became more." He listened to me complain about feeling controlled, about feeling like I'd lost my independence in our marriage. "So when you said you weren't my property," I said slowly, "you were really trying to justify having already given pieces of yourself to someone else?" Her face crumpled. "I didn't plan for it to happen. I just felt so suffocated, like everything I did had to go through you first. James made me feel independent again. Independent enough to have an emotional affair while I paid your bills and maintained your life?" The next few days were a strange kind of purgatory. We moved around each other like wounded animals, too proud to admit defeat, but too exhausted to maintain our positions. Anna began handling tasks she'd never had to manage, calling service providers, scheduling appointments, navigating the bureaucracy of adult life that I'd shielded her from. She also, I noticed, stopped taking calls from James, at least when I was around. I found myself stepping back into small roles, not out of obligation, but from genuine desire to help, even as I processed her betrayal. The conversation that finally broke our stalemate came on a Tuesday evening. Anna muted the TV show we'd been watching in silence and turned to me. "Do you really think I don't appreciate you?" she asked. The question caught me off guard. "Sometimes it feels that way," I admitted. "Like everything I do is just expected, never noticed. And apparently, while I was doing all of that, you were looking for appreciation somewhere else." She nodded slowly, tears starting to form in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to feel that way. I guess I got so used to you handling everything that I forgot to see the effort it took. And when I felt overwhelmed by that, I looked for escape instead of trying to fix it with you." Slowly, we began rebuilding our dynamic. Anna learned to lean on me without becoming helpless, and I learned to step back without abandoning her entirely, all while we worked through the trust issues her emotional affair had created. The bills got paid, sometimes by her, sometimes by me, often together. The house returned to functional cleanliness through shared effort rather than my solo maintenance. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, Anna reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. "I don't want to go back to how things were," she said, "but I don't want to lose what we're building now." I squeezed her hand gently, still feeling the fragility of our reconstructed trust. "Neither do I. But this only works if we're both completely here, completely committed." She nodded, understanding the weight of what I was asking. "I am, completely." The experiment was over. The real marriage, tested, broken, and rebuilt, had begun.